Welcome back to the podcast, everyone. It's a pleasure to have you all on board here today again. We are discussing again different perspectives, and today we have the pleasure of hosting Dr. Pallab Das, who is a distinguished legal academic and the founding dean of the School of Law at Centurion University of Technology and Management. With his profound expertise in maritime law, arbitration law, and in the increasing vital field of mental health law, Dr. Das brings a unique perspective at the intersection of law and society and has a very vast trove of experience, which will be helpful for us in terms of our viewers and listeners. As the founding dean, Dr. Das is driven by a mission to infuse legal education with real world relevance, particularly highlighting maritime arbitration. And he's also committed to nurturing the next generation of legal leaders, emphasizing rigorous legal research and writing skills and crucial soft skill development, which is fostering compassion and competence with its students. His extensive experience also includes roles at esteemed institutions like the National Law University, Odisha, where he pioneered the maritime law course, as well as in universities like Bennett, Amity, and Birla Global. He also holds a PhD in maritime arbitration from NLU Odisha and an LLM in international commercial and maritime law from Swansea University. Beyond academia, he is also the founder of IMARC, which is an initiative focused on law mentorship and skill development. We are very grateful to have Sir on board, and we will be very happy to discuss different perspectives of maritime law, arbitration, and his own work around mental health laws and his own research and academic fields. Thank you, sir, for being on board.
Thank you so much, Kaushik, for inviting me for this wonderful initiative that you have started.
Just as we start off, sir, I think the first thing that we'll sort of discuss today is the idea about what made you get up into academy and research and what involves you in this field. So, if you could just give us a bit of an introduction about yourself and how you got into this field and what were your motivations.
This is a very crucial question because a lot of students, really don't have a mentor or a guide as such to tell them or to really know what are the potentials that they have. So, for example, in my 12 years of experience, I can now tell that one particular student has this quality and this potential, and he should pursue this particular field or this particular line. For example, someone can be very good with research. On the other hand, someone could be a very audacious speaker. So you need to you need to churn them out. You need to understand them. You need to spend time with them. But unfortunately, I did not have such kind of a mentor or a guide who would tell me what suits me as a person. Do I really like a desk job? Do I really like a field job? What kind of job really suits me? So, what I really had to do was I had to experiment my professional journey. Now, I could do this because I had the support of my family, but not everybody can do this. So, this is a very crucial thing to understand. So I started as a student span of litigation practice in the lower courts, where I understood how the litigation works, whether I am a fit candidate for litigation or not. And thereafter, I moved into the judiciary, wherein I cleared the judiciary in the very first attempt itself. I worked there for a couple of years, and then I got a chance to, do my higher studies through scholarship, and that is when I had to decide what am I supposed to do, whether I should stay back in judiciary, because you know that everybody thinks that judiciary is the only and the ultimate end of the career in law. Everybody wants to be a judge, but then I had to take a very strong and a bold decision. And that's when I decided that not every time I will get a chance to go to UK, or for that matter to the Western country, to pursue my master's in commercial and maritime law, that too on an Indian excellence scholarship. So it was difficult a journey, and tumultuous to the matter, because my family was not in support of that, and I had to take that, and I had to take my life into my own control, because and I am a first generation lawyer, and there was nobody to back me. There was nobody to support, in the sense that, or guide me what am I doing is right or wrong. So I had to take a decision. Whether the decision is right or wrong, that only future can say. But as I took the decision to quit the judiciary and pursue my higher studies, it was then that I think, the decision that I took a positive turn when I was invited to start the maritime course at NLU Odisha. And that's when my academic journey started. And I really saw that this is the field that I really enjoyed the most. And that was the time I decided that no, I mean, my experience as a law student, my experience as a practicing advocate, my experience as a judge, and my experience now as an academic. Out of all the four things, the best thing that suited me was academia. I wish I had someone who would have told me when I was a young law student that you should pursue academia because you're good at it. Because during my undergraduation, also, I had got this opportunity to teach junior students. One of my professors gave me an opportunity to teach junior students, and I had enjoyed and I got positive feedback. But it never clicked my mind that I must pursue that, and research is also an option. Right. So this is my journey, I would say, an experiential journey of where I am today. And once I started my academic journey, I went through various universities and somehow ended up in institution building. And today I have started this law school under the blessings of my president, Professor Muktikant Mishra, and my vice chancellor, Professor Supriya Patnaik, who gave me this platform, and also Captain Vikas Patra, who gave me this platform to start this law school from the very scratch. And today we have, I would say, close to 100 students in 2 to 3 years' time.
People do not have an access to these resources where they get the idea about what kind of fields they can better be suited to. So initiatives which help them are lacking in the world as well. I think that is where something which comes around where you don't know what your skills are and what your skills are like in touch with in terms of the legal field. And I hope that this podcast and this particular reference and conversations with people like you would help people get that idea as well. So let's just go deep dive into your journey in terms of research and academia. I think you've focused a lot on maritime law and arbitration throughout your entire career, sir. So what has your like experiences been? So how did you get drawn to the field of maritime law and arbitration, and what essentially was the focus of your postdoc as well, in terms of your research, in terms of how you have also done your PhD journey?
When I wanted to pursue my higher studies, there was this there was no guidance for me as to which field would be the best field, keeping in mind the future. Now, had I known that artificial intelligence is the future today, I would probably would have done. But coming from a coastal district like Bhubaneswar in Orissa, uh, there's a there's a lot of cases that was coming in terms of maritime arrest of vessels. So when I was practicing, I had this opportunity to guide my senior in arrest of vessel. So that is where I understood that not many have done their studies or, for that matter, their practices in maritime. And if I can mm, capture this field, it will be some of the few people who would have done maritime law. So that is how I ended up in Swansea University, which is known for its maritime law. And coming to the arbitration side of it, it was my professor back in Swansea University who inculcated that interest in me. The way he taught those the cases, the way he taught us international commercial arbitration was something that rekindled my interest in arbitration. And when I came back to India, I started teaching these two subjects at NLU Odisha. And that further gave me much more enthusiasm and a kind of a push to do more of a research. And I went to a summer school in Austria on international commercial arbitration, and that further rekindled my interest in arbitration. And then maritime was, of course, something that I have always loved to teach. So, and in academia, you are supposed to. One of my professors had told me that don't stop only in undergraduation. Try to complete your PhD. So that is where I decided that I would do my PhD in maritime arbitration, and I think in India my maritime arbitration after completing my maritime arbitration, the book that I have written is the only book which amalgamates all the contractual disputes and the comparative analysis of UK and Indian cases and in India. So I think the decision that I had taken to quit judiciary has proved to be a right decision.
Somehow you end up in your journey to the right places as well. I think that is what people very aptly tell you, that even if you are unsure at a point of time, you will get more and more sure as you're going on. But since you've been working so long in this field, sir, I think you must have observed that in legal education also there's a lot of challenges. So are there anything specific in terms of how you have been teaching maritime law that you've seen problems occur in your classrooms, or maybe things that you've seen in India which is much more relevant for you to teach in the classroom atmosphere?
Yes, this is, I think, a very vital question that you have asked. Maritime segment, as such, is a very untapped segment. A lot of people do not want to venture into it, or there's a very lackadaisical attitudes towards this maritime industry. Money is there in in this sector. If you become a practicing advocate in the maritime law field, there's a lot of money because the ships and the disputes run in billions of dollars. It is not Indian rupee, it is in dollars. So I would say the kind of curriculum that is set up is a very theoretical curriculum that is set up. And understanding maritime law at times for an undergraduate level student becomes difficult. So, industry visit, excursions to ports, these must be a part of the curriculum that I would say. But keeping in mind that we have to have so many kinds of, so many hours of lectures, so many number of days of lectures, we kind of cannot fit into all these practical aspects. And I think every institution, every university must get that freedom, must get that autonomy to build in their curriculum where the number of hours of lecture should not be important. It is the kind of skills that you're building in. Because, see, what happens is that you probably might be studying from the top legal institutes in India. But coming down, you really do not know where to file an FIR, whom to contact to file an FIR, is a lack of skill. It's not a lack of theory. You know what an FIR is. You know that the criminal law stands like this. You know how to write an FIR, but you really don't know how to communicate with the IO who deals with it. So that's, I think, is an important aspect.
Definitely.
Is inculcating the skilled part into the curriculum.
Definitely, sir. I think we fundamentally don't understand the very important nature of how lawyers have like skills associated with different paradigms, like interacting with clients, going and doing institutional work, which courts to approach, what to do. And I think in some law schools also the idea about doing internship work and then learning things is much more predominant in students because they understand that this theory is sort of like giving this lacuna because theory is not inculcating a lot of practical aspects to it. But sir, I think that is sort of changing as you highlight as well. So it's becoming more and more positive because institutions are maybe encouraging different visits, practical exposures to students as well. And that is becoming more and more part of legal education, like legal aid cells, clinical education is also becoming predominant in law schools. Let's move on, sir. I think one of the fundamental things that I want to discuss here as well is that since there is a lot of recent like legislation and activity around maritime law in India, which is like modernizing a lot of things and activities. From your perspective, sir, what have you seen to be the major challenges in the legal framework in India? And in contrast to, say, global standards or how institutions abroad or everywhere else have worked in your research, and how do you think India's goal of a maritime vision is being justified or being brought around, sir, from your perspective?
Two, three things I would like to say over here. And I hope that would fit into the question that you've asked me. One is that in India, a lot of laws are being made. And these laws are made after only, I think, if I'm not wrong, um, without even consultation with the stakeholders. I think first, when the laws are being made, um, what needs to be done is that we need to have working groups, we need to have conferences, we need to invest more in research and development. Now, why am I emphasizing this? Because I have been going to a lot of conferences in abroad, and especially in the maritime field itself, because I mean, I'm a member of the International Association of Maritime Universities. A lot of conferences which I attend in these universities across the globe, what happens is that Western countries invest into these research. And in these conferences, we debate, we discuss, we come out with proposals, we give recommendations, and then they give it to the government. The government looks into these recommendations, and then they come out with a legislation. But I think in India, it is the other way around. Let's take, for example, the Sagarmala project. Right. I mean, I have been hearing about this, but nobody I have come across who's actually dealing with it. I have not come across anybody who's actually working with the Sagarmala project. Everything is happening in the ministerial level, in the cabinet level. Now, the role that is played by the academicians, the role that is played by the practitioners is important over here now, because they are the ones who are working the grassroots level. They are the ones who understand this. If everything happens at the top level, legislations come into picture, and then like what happened with the I think the Advocates Amendment Act, it was later withdrawn. Right. So I think a lot of research needs to be done. A lot of working groups needs to be formed, wherein you can have a partnership with the government and individuals, government and universities, government and think tanks, and then you can come out with the legislations. I think that's a better way of it. Now, I mean, I hail from Orissa. Now, Orissa has a maritime board, but trust me, nothing has. We have so much of talk going on that there will be lot many ports that will be developed. Private companies are being hired to develop these ports, but what about these practitioners? What about the academicians who actually give a lot? Are we involving these people? That's my question. I think we must involve all these stakeholders when the idea is fresh. And when the idea is fresh, we can come out with a very concrete and ripe fruit in terms of, and that's where the actual work.
I think your ideas also sort of like translate into the field of arbitration as well. There are a lot of other issues that we've seen because arbitration in India is now being pushed towards being institutionalized in a way, and there are a lot of different conversations happening. So, do you think similar things play around in the arbitration landscape as well? And how do you think arbitration is changing in India today?
Arbitration is not is was one of the forerunners in alternate dispute resolution. But now, what is the forerunner is mediation. So I would say, and there's a reason for it, because when arbitration was nascent, and the arbitrators used to charge less fees. But now, when arbitration became a very big thing for everybody, these retired judges started charging a lot of fees, and companies or transnational companies then wanted to let's go for mediation. That's something that is cheaper. That's something that is in house. That's something that we can, because in mediation it is not that the mediator decides the case. It is not an adjudicatory method. It is something that the mediator facilitates the entire discussion. So I think that, and then again, with a lot of amendments taking place, a lot of time was being consumed in arbitration in terms of the award writing. People moved into mediation, and now, of course, we have in India the Mediation Act of 2023. Although it is not in force, it has not come into force, but I think the future is mediation, and arbitration would be the second runners up, I would say, in terms of an alternate dispute resolution. Having said so, people still have a kind of, what would I say, trust issues when it comes to arbitration or mediation. People still think that if you go to the court, it is much more better because there's a judge sitting, and um, the 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 colonial mindset is still there with the people. That's what I would say.
There is a lot of other conversations to be had in terms of this field as well, and it's still a developing idea. So let's move on to another part of the conversation, sir, where you have done so much of research and you've written so many books as well in terms of your field. So if you would just run us through, like, for your publication through the lens of maritime law worldview and maritime arbitration judicial trends and practices, what led you to sort of write these books, and how were you sort of thinking about your work in terms of reflecting in this book as well?
Some of the books are edited volumes, and two books are actually written and edited. One is the second edition has been compiled by me, which is the Admiralty. Both the books are the only books in India. Now, when it comes to the edited volume, I found that a lot of research work and a lot of authors want to contribute in the Indian side of the maritime sector, but there was nobody who could call them, invite them, and write about the topics that are discussed. So that is when the through the lens of maritime law, a world view, I invited people from across the globe to write one chapter each, discussing on the maritime field. And India needs such kind of scholarships. India needs such kind of literatures where we discuss not just India but what is happening in the world. That was the major idea for me to coming up with the first book in that case. The second book, which talks about the Admiralty jurisdiction, was the one where I got a chance as a young academic. I got my first chance to go through the entire book and revise the entire book for the second edition. Now, it talks about arrest of the vessels, it talks about maritime lien, it talks about necessary supplies. If you really want to know the Admiralty Jurisdiction and Settlement Act of 2017, I think this is the only book that will give you a thorough understanding of what that act is. Because that's where I had, it was 2017, I was editing the book, and I was reshaping the book, and the bill had converted into an act. So that was the right time when the revision of the book had taken place. Then comes the other book which I have written in terms of the judicial trend. As I said, there is not a single book worldwide where you will find all the maritime contracts written. When you look forward for what are the different kinds of maritime contracts, you will not find one single book which has collated about or written about the maritime contract. So that was the inspiration which led to the final materialization of this book. And I think you will find different kinds of maritime contracts in that book. You will find the different kind of interpretation that judges take while reading through the contracts. Because so this book is a little bit of mixture of contract law as well as maritime law as well as arbitration. Because I was lucky enough to get hold of some of the arbitral awards of from the ICC, because arbitral awards are not made public. So I requested them, and they had given me some of the around 30 to 40 arbitral awards, and I was able to analyze those arbitral awards from the point of view of how arbitrators look into the case and what kind of awards they can write. So this is more of an interpretative approach. This book is more about interpretation of the psychology that goes behind coming to a judgment of a judge, the psychology that goes behind coming to an award of an arbitrator. This book is all about that.
Different takes also give us a different perspective as to how different aspects of the field are sort of like moving around and interacting with each other. But this is not the only thing that you've done, sir, because I think you've done a lot of intersection research as well. So even beyond, say, these books, you worked on ideas like justice for women and how animal rights in India operate. So what is the key factor in terms of your research? Where do you think intersectionality lies, and how do you think intersectionality is important in terms of researching for different law fields?
Now, let me tell you, I'll give you an example. Centurion University is coming up with something which is which will probably help the general people at large. But we are law students, we are lawyers, right? We are law academicians. We do not know how programs are coded, but it is an engineer who knows how the programs are coded, right? So that's where the intersectionality or multidisciplinary nature comes into picture. We are now building an app which will help the general um, public, but my law students would not know that. So we are taking help of the engineering department, right? So if we can come up with such multidisciplinary research, so if I work with the management faculty, if I work with an engineering faculty, I will probably be able to understand the nuances of an engineering, of the engineering mind, of the management mind, and the legal mind. Now you can you picturize a scene where all these three minds are working and coming out with the research work? How wonderful and beautiful the research work can be. I think that's where the intersectionality works.
For me also, when I was going through my law school, I think I never wanted to restrict myself to one field. So I've tried working with sir in terms of maritime law. I've tried doing a couple of other things. So what that basically highlighted to me was that even in your own subject, if you go through different topics, it gives you like a fresh perspective on your work. But also if you go and look at other fields also, it gives you a lot more ideas where to research and what to do. So I think all of these things do help. And as you were reflecting, sir, that these fields, if they work together, they will give you a lot of perspective. The last thing that I would sort of like to ask you in this section, sir, is you've done so much of work in terms of researching and writing, and taken this into your institution as well, sir. So how do you think this approach affects, say, curriculum building or teaching methodologies that you employ in colleges, and also the overall academic direction that you might take as a institutional head or someone who's very intrinsically involved in the running of the institution?
I personally think that the more you research, the more you read, the more knowledge you gain. But you must not have a full stop there. If you can share it with someone, you revise what you have learned, you revise what you have worked, you revise what you have read. So the idea is, unlearn, relearn, and then learn again. So for example, I'm working right now on a paper on cybersecurity in the maritime field. Now, I will definitely read across a lot of people. I will go and have a question across cybersecurity experts. How do they work on it? Now, that's my new idea, but I cannot keep it with myself. The best way to learn is to disseminate it to your students, or to you try to go and speak out at avenues or platforms where you get a chance to speak. Otherwise, it just stays with you. Nobody, and with the Gen Z that we talk about, um, we are. I mean, I think I'm a mixture of. People say that I am a millennial, but I think I am a boomer, the old school. That's what I would say. But with the Gen Z, they don't really like to read books. Their span is 30 seconds of scrolling.
Right.
Uh, 30 seconds the video. They see the video and that's they learn. And I think that's where the technology comes into picture. Whatever you have whatever you have done your work, if you can um, show it through a video, like for example what you're doing right now, if you can bring the learnings, the knowledge in the form of a smart learning, that I would say would be the future pedagogy. You show it through animations, you show it through videos, that's where they learn more. Because otherwise I have noticed this, that no matter how much I talk in the class, the span of concentration is 20 minutes. Beyond that, they're all in the lost in their own world. So I think 20 minutes and then an animation or a video and then again 20 minutes and then a video is the new form of teaching.
There's a lot more problems in terms of changing your practices around how you find your students to be. So different students reciprocate differently. I think that's a very important perspective. Just going towards the idea about how you've discussed mental health law as well. So because I think your work moving beyond maritime law and arbitration has also now ventured into the mental health law aspects. So what drove you towards this field and what kind of work have you been doing here?
I have received a grant where I have been working on the mental health of the law students across the law schools in Odisha. It's I think it's a pioneer work in terms of because nobody wants to come out with their the stigma that is associated with mental health. And unless you talk about your journey that you have faced, people think that it's better that we should not talk about it, otherwise, I'll be criticized. So, we have done an anonymous empirical study of more than 100 students across the state of Orissa and across the districts of Orissa. And we have found out that the very first thing that the students think about mental health, about the problem, is that they don't want to go to a counselor because someone will find out that he or she has gone to the counselor. That means there's a problem with the psychology of the student. I think that fear is something that is still there, innate, not just in students but even in the parents. The first thing the parents ask, "Are you mad that you're going to a psychiatrist?" The answer should be, "No, I'm not mad, but I just need a counseling. That's all." That is, and this work is coming out in the form of book very soon, and I think it will be it will be available to the public at large this year itself. And I hope that I have played, although small enough, but I've played a part in sensitizing people that, like, you have physical disorders, you have physical diseases, you can go through mental disease or mental disorder. I do not like to call it as a disease. I would like to call it as a disorder because it's something that can be cured. You know, people should take it seriously. People should understand that with the kind of society that we are living in, stigmatization won't help. Helping them or listening to them will help. I think that's what I define mental health. Mental health is all about quietly listening to the person who's going through something. And it's okay. And it's absolutely okay that you don't feel good sometimes and you need counseling and you need to go to the psychiatrist and you need to take medications.
How do you think, sir, this perspective is in the law field as well, because I think law students do go through these problems, but I think there's also enough amount of conversation to be had that legal professionals are also having this problem, because there's some amount of toxicity which might be possible, or some amount of pressure that might intrinsically be applied on these individuals. So in your perspective, sir, how do you think that the legal field itself overall, apart from students, are sort of factoring these things around, and where do you think the mental health law is heading towards in India?
I think the entire practice of law needs a lot of change, because the way the cause list of the high courts come, the way the cases are listed, these are something that needs a change. You need some time to go through the file. You need some time to read the law, to apply the law in the present case. And I've seen lawyers working till 2 a.m., getting up in the morning at 6 a.m. or 8 a.m. They do not have any personal life. So we talk about work life balance. Where is the work life balance? It's only work balance. There's no life that is there, and that's why I said the entire legal practice needs an overwhelming change. And I would suggest that all the lawyers or law students must have counseling sessions, must visit counselors, must go for therapies to detox themselves from the workload that they have.
There's a huge conversation to be had, and I think the work that you're doing in terms of your book would also help have these conversations better. So let's just go towards the closing segment, sir. So you've talked extensively about your experiences in academia and beyond, and we've had a very enriching conversation around different fields. So if you were to give some sort of like final advice and final um, thoughts in terms of your work and your experiences towards the listeners and viewers, what would you say is perhaps something that you would like to leave them with? And what do you think the situation in Odisha is, and how do you want to sort of let our viewers know how to improve their situations here better in terms of their work?
No, I mean, I have spoken a lot about my field. I would now like to give a very general, basic suggestion, which I have gained in my 12 years of professional experience. Um, I would say that don't bother at all about what people are thinking. If if certain work profile is not suiting you, but other work profile is suiting you, then you should happily switch over to the other work profile that suits you more, because ultimately nobody is going to come when you're sick. Even Steve Jobs had said this, right? If I'm not wrong, that spend time with your family. Even Abdul Kalam had said, work is never ending, but your family um, will is a very short time that you spend with your family. So I think don't worry about what people are thinking. Um, uh, do what you love to do, because if you are passionate about writing, be a writer. If you're passionate about arguing in front of the court, be a lawyer. If you're passionate about building lives of a lot of people, be an academic. Then the passion will drive you, and you will not be tired with your passion. You will be tired with your work, right? So I think that is the first advice that I would give you in terms: do what you like to do, and don't worry about what other people are talking about you. I'll give you one very good example. In Canada, some people don't work at all, and they are okay with it. It is in India that people start talking, okay, he's 22 years of old, he's not doing any kind of work. It's a shame, shame, shame.
So I think
Yeah.
Indians have a very different perspective on mental health altogether. They like to pile on pressure more and more, but it's a huge conversation point to be had. But we're very glad, sir, that you had this conversation with us. We are very enriched by the knowledge that you've shared with us as well, and I'm pretty sure the listeners and viewers will get a lot from what you've mentioned throughout in terms of your journey and everything. We will add all of the links to sir's work down in the description, so please go and check out sir's own books, and also he has written his own personal memoir, and you can also check that out as well. Thank you, sir, so much for coming on board with us and being part of this initiative. We are very glad to have you on board, and we also hope that we can invite you again pretty soon.
Thank you. Thank you so much for inviting.
Thank
Thank
you,
you.
sir.